Okay, let's get started. Shalom. We're going to be continuing from the end of last night's Shiur, where we were in the first Mishna of Pirkei Avot, in Perek Aleph, Mishna Aleph of Pirkei Avot, and we were looking at the idea that the Anshe Knesset Hagdola taught. Right? They taught three lessons. The first lesson was that you should have a Masudim Bedin. Let's just get the source sheet here. There's source sheets, by the way. Sorry, there are source sheets in the description and in the comments. So we're using source sheet number 1 until we move on to source sheet number 2. So it says, have a Masudim Medim, have midim tamid harbe, vasusi agatorah. So now we're going to look at this idea that the Anshe Knesset Hagdola taught of having many students. What does it mean that a person should have many students? Right? So obviously we believe in education. And we believe that our schools should be full to capacity. There's no reason not to have full to capacity, but what's the benefit of having many Talmidim? So if you look at the source sheet, look at source sheet number 1, and if your Hebrew isn't your strong suit, or you don't have access to the source sheets, it's fine. I'm going to read it and then translate. So don't fear. Okay, so he says as follows. He says, "Midu Talmidim harbe kedas beis Hillel." This is in accordance with the opinion of Beit Hillel. Kinyan sheshanidu Beit Shammai omrim ein l'adam ela tamid hagod v'tzanua v'chasher v'yer shemayim shneimar kol choshech tamon tzitfarno. So Beit Shammai had the opinion, in contradistinction to Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai had the opinion that you should only teach people that were of the greatest of God-fearing people, the real perfect students. Those are the only people that you should teach. While Beis Hillel, and he felt differently. He said, Beis Hillel, right? You should teach 100 students, because if you teach 100 students, then for sure 10 of them at least will come out great. If you should teach 10, so if you have an opportunity to teach 10, because then maybe you'll have 2 students that come out good. And maybe you only have 2 students. Teach 2 students, because you don't know which one of them is going to come out as the good one. So Beis Hillel would open up his doors to his yeshiva, and everybody could come in. They didn't limit who could enter his Beit Midrash and who could not enter his Beit Midrash. Everybody was invited in, and he would ask, "Is everybody here?" And then they would say yes. So there was one incident where Beis Hillel said, "Is everybody here?" And one of the students said, "There's one kid's missing. He's not the kid that gets it so well. He's not the star student. So don't worry about him." So Amar Lahem, Yavo Katon, Shatira Duli Yados. He says, no, get that kid. Get that little kid. The kid that you think isn't so special, go get him, because in the future, the generations are going to act in accordance with his teachings. If you lo, Rabban Yochanan Zakkai, Hine, Ki Ein Lidchos Aktanu Ibnei Agdolim, Ki Diem Dasu Tayashim, V'Anyan Zed Darshu Azal, Booker, Zera, Zerecha, V'Arev, Right? So he says, because all kids become goats when they get older, right? And little kids who right now we think aren't that important, and we think, it's okay if one kid is missing from the class. No, it's not true. Every kid's important, because that kid eventually will grow up to be a very special student. And that's the idea, that in the morning, like the pasuk in Kohelet says, in the morning we put in our work, we plant our seeds, and then in the evening they grow, and right? So what's the idea there? So the idea is that we put our effort into every student, and then every student eventually will grow up to be something special. So he says, and to have a lot of students is a very good thing, and it's a merit to the teacher that has a lot of students, because statistically they'll be able to put out many more students. It's an interesting approach, a statistical approach to having a lot of students, because chances are then the students will some of them at least will come out to be great people and come out to be successful adults. It's an interesting approach. It's sort of counterintuitive to how we look at educational perspective today, because we would think that the more students you have, the less of a chance that you're actually going to have to be able to to influence them. There's less personal attention being given by the teacher, so it doesn't seem like such a smart approach to be able to say that put in more and more students, because then you'll have the opportunity to have the chance to statistically increase the chances of a great person coming out. That doesn't seem like the best approach. But I think that there's from an educational perspective, this does make sense, because a lot of our students are greatly affected by the atmosphere that they find themselves in. So a lot of times it's true that while a great big classroom with a lot of people, it can be very distracting to students. The teacher doesn't have as much time to deal with each student, and again, if you have too big of a classroom, obviously there's gradations that we're talking about here. But it doesn't seem like it would seem at first it's not a good idea. But then actually, when you think about it, if a student has 5 people around him that are studying, it has somewhat of an influence. But if the student finds himself in a classroom of 100 people who are studying, and he looks around and he says, "Oh, this is important," and she sees all her friends there, and they're all studying as well, so then that actually does make sense. It does improve the chances that the student will do better. And maybe that's the idea here that Rabbi Yonah is saying, that by having more students, right? Actually, I guess it's like Talmidim Harbe have a lot of students, and maybe the idea is by having a lot of students, you're creating a better learning environment for your students, and maybe that's the idea, and that increases the chances of your students doing better. So maybe that's the idea. That's the end of our study of the first Mishnah. We're not going to spend so much time now on Asusia Torah, the last phrase of the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah, but that's the end of the first Mishnah. This idea of having. Yesterday we spent a lot of time on being deliberate in judgment, and how being deliberate in judgment is also important when it comes to Torah study, thinking things through over and over and over again. And we neglected to talk about it yesterday, but that also makes sense. When we talk about having a lot of students, being deliberate in our studies, it also makes sense in other areas, not just as a judge and not just when you study Torah, but really in all areas of life, whether it's how we deal with our children, how we deal with our parents, how we deal with other people. It also makes sense to think things through and not just react, but act in a proactive fashion after having thought things through. So that's the end of the first Mishnah. Let's move on excitedly to our second Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. This is Perek Aleph, Mishnah Beis. So if you have access, everybody has access to the source sheets. If you can access the source sheets, let's put it that way, because they're in the comment section right below here, and they're in the description, which should be right above. So you can click on the second source sheet, and then we'll get going, and we'll read the second Mishnah. Okay, it's exciting. Shimon HaTzadik, Haya Mishari Knesses Hagdolah. Now, there was an individual, we're going to talk about him for a little while. His name is Shimon HaTzadik, Simon the Righteous. Right? They're not Simon from the Maccabee story. This is Shimon HaTzadik, and he was the last member alive of the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah. Just to remind ourselves from yesterday, the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah were the men of the Great Assembly. These were the 120 individuals. Interestingly enough, the Knesset has 120 members after the 120 members of the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah. That's how they picked that magic number. These were the 120 leaders who were appointed themselves. They were appointed to lead the Jewish people in their first exile when they left Eretz Yisrael to Babel after the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. Mordechai was a member of the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah. Ezra and Nehemiah were members of the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah. Some of the members were prophets, some of them were not. And the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah, really, if you look at one body of Jews who left a mark on Judaism that probably left the greatest mark on Judaism, the greatest influence on Judaism, you would have to say it's the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah. There was no such thing as a synagogue before the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah. That was their institution, to have a synagogue, so that Jews would have a central place without the Beit HaMikdash, without the temple. They'd have a central place to go. That's one institution. Prayer, the text of the Siddur, was instituted by the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah. Brachot that we make, instituted by the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah. All these things were brand new institutions by the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah. So that's an interesting thing. So Shimon HaTzadik actually came over with a few of the members of the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah. He came to Eretz Yisrael when the Babel leadership and the king of Babel allowed the Jews to go back and rebuild the second Beis Hamikdash under the leadership of Ezra and Nehemiah. Shimon HaTzadik was the first one that went back. He was the last member of the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, meaning he was the longest surviving member of the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. He came, and after Ezra and Nehemiah passed away, he became the leader of the Jewish people. He also happened to be a Kohen and was the Kohen Gadol. So he wore two hats. He wore the hat of the Kohen Gadol, and he wore the hat of the leader of the Jewish people at that time. And then at that time, Jewish leaders were both the political leaders and the scholarly leaders at the same time. So he played both roles. Omer, he said three things. He said one thing. So the world stands on three things. On the Torah, on avoda. Avoda, in general, in modern Hebrew, means work. Here it's going to mean the service in the Beit HaMikdash. V'al gemilot chasadim, and on chesed, on acts of kindness. The world stands on those three pillars, right? On Torah, avoda, and gemilot chasadim. Famous idea, and this is where it comes from. Now, before we get into the ideas that Shimon HaTzadik taught, let's look at who Shimon HaTzadik was. Now, Shimon HaTzadik, we gave a little biography, but he plays a fascinating role in Jewish history. As he's probably a younger member of the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah when he makes Aliyah from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael to rebuild the second Beis Hamikdash and be a Kohen serving in the Beis Hamikdash, eventually becoming the Kohen Gadol and eventually leading the Jewish people. So that's where he starts off. But as he gets older and he takes on the role of leadership, the world around him is changing in ways that the world just couldn't imagine. Bavel, which had been the world's superpower, probably for close to 100 years at that point, maybe even a little over 100 years, to where the point was that there wasn't really anybody alive that remembered a world where Bavel wasn't the predominant force. And if you remember from Megillah that we just read a couple weeks ago, it says that the Bavel, that Ahasuerus, who was the king of Bavel at the time, not at this time, but back then at the Purim story, ruled Mehodu ad Kush. So he had this tremendous 127 provinces that he led. So it was most of what the world knew of the world at that time. The Babylonians were in charge, and quickly though, the Greeks technically the Greco-Syrians start taking over, and they start battling the Babylonians and take down their empire, and they become the predominant force. The person that did that was Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was the leader of the Greek people, and this would start, eventually, this would come a couple hundred years later to the Hanukkah story when the Greeks tried Hellenizing the Jews and the relationship didn't go so well. But here's the seminal moment of their relationship with the Greeks is at this point. Shimon HaTzadik is the leader of the Jewish people. He's already older. He's already the Kohen Gadol. And Alexander the Great was wont to come into a town, into a land, a nation, and essentially flatten the place. That was what made him so great, was the fact that he was an amazing warrior. So the Talmud in Yuma tells a fascinating story that, if you've heard this, I apologize, but it's always good to hear it again, and maybe we'll gain something out of this. It tells the story. It says, Yom Hargerizim, Udolo Lemisped, Yom Shibikshu Kutim, is based on Kano Alexandrus, Muktoto Harveno Venasulhem, Bo, Vedio, Shimon HaTzadik Masa. Right? So this is it was at a time where Alexander made a deal and was about to come in and destroy the Beis Hamikdash, and they told this to Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon HaTzadik, the Kohen Gadol of the Beis Hamikdash at the time. So what does he do? And it says, big day kahuna. So he puts on his clothes that the Kohen wears when he's doing his service. And he wraps himself in his clothes of the Kohen. He takes the important people from the Jews, the leaders of the Jewish people, with him. And they take torches with them, lit torches with them. Right, so they walk with Shimon HaTzadik, some on one side of Shimon HaTzadik, some on the other of Shimon HaTzadik, right, so until they get to Dor. They get to Dor, It's early in the morning, right before the sun rises. It starts getting a little light out. Amar lahem, right? Shalom and Shachar lahem, mi halalu. So then people run into them. They say, "Who are you?" Yehudim shemardu b'cha. Right? So they say, Alexander the Great says, "Who are these people?" Yes, these are the Jews. They're rebelling against you. Kevan shegilu l'chitropos azarcha chama upagu b'zeh b'zeh. Kevan shara l'shimon tzadik yard merkavasa l'ishtachad lefanav. So when Alexander the Great saw Shimon HaTzadik in his big day kahuna with people on both sides of him, he got down off his chariot or whatever he was riding at the time and bows down in front of Shimon HaTzadik. So Alexander the Great soldiers were obviously stunned. So he says, a great king like you, Alexander the Great, you're going to bow down to this Jew? So he says, this, I have an image of Shimon HaTzadik in my mind. Every time before I go to war, this man's image appears to me and tells me I'm going to win. Every single time. Alexander the Great had an undefeated record, right? He was undefeated. He went to every battle he won. So he says that then before I go to battle, an image of this man comes to me and tells me I'm going to win. So So Alexander the Great says to Shimon HaTzadik, says, "What are you here for now?" And he's probably a little surprised also to see that he's a real person. So he says, "What are you here for?" So he says, "Listen, you have these people next to you. They're called Kutim. They've told you that we're trying to rebel against you. They've whispered in your ear that we're trying to rebel against you and you should destroy us. And they're doing this because really they want our stuff. They want to take over. They don't like us. They don't like the Jews. But listen, in the Beis HaMikdash, in the temple that we own, right, that we have, right, so we control it, we pray for you, and now they're telling you to destroy it." He says, so Alexander the Great does some horrific things to the Kutim for threatening Shimon HaTzadik and his people and their Beit HaMikdash, and that day the Beit HaMikdash wasn't destroyed. What do you see from this story? This fascinating story. What do you see? So first of all, Shimon HaTzadik probably violated rules of the Torah by doing this. He put on his Kohen clothes. The Kohen clothes, the big day kahuna, are only supposed to be worn in the Beit HaMikdash. You can't wear them to Purim. You can't wear them to Shabbos meals, right? And you definitely can't walk out in the middle of the desert in them. So what was he thinking? So, right, so obviously now you'll say, it was Pikuach Nefesh, right? Now, obviously it's a miracle, it's miraculous. By the way, a strange thing, why is it that Alexander is such a popular name among Jews, right? So the Gemara goes on, we didn't read it, but the Gemara goes on and says that out of gratitude to Shimon HaTzadik for not destroying the Beis HaMikdash and not harming the Jews named every kid Alexander, after Alexander that was born that year. Imagine, I always like telling this joke when I tell the story, imagine classrooms, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, as the years went on, every boy's named Alexander. Alexander, yeah, here. Alexander, yeah, where are you? It'd be a little confusing for the teachers. But in any case, the idea of being Shimon HaTzadik was a man of action, not just a man of study. He wasn't just an old man that was in the Beit HaMikdash and a man of ritual. He knew how to take action. He knew how to go out and get what the Jewish people needed. And that was the leadership of Shimon HaTzadik. So Shimon HaTzadik, when you think about Shimon HaTzadik and Kohen Gadol, especially when you hear the word Tzadik, so you start thinking, okay, Shimon HaTzadik must be he's a righteous person. That's it. He's just a tzaddik. An old man, long beard, studies a lot. Maybe picture him with the Kohen Gadol robe on. But now picture him as a man of action who led the important people of Yerushalayim out to go ahead and do great things. Okay, so that's who he was. Now let's look at what he taught. So Rabbeinu Yonah explains that we're going to look at source number 3 in our source sheets. This is source sheet number 2. And look what Rabbeinu Yonah says. We're going to see a debate between Rabbeinu Yonah and the Rambam as to what it means that the world stands on 3 things. What does it mean that the world stands on these 3 things? So again, we're going to see a debate between the Rambam, who was earlier, and Rabbeinu Yonah. We're going to start with Rabbeinu Yonah, though. Rabbeinu Yonah lived about 100 years after the Rambam. So we're going to look at Rabbeinu Yonah. Listen to what he says. Three things the world stands. It's for these things that the world was created. Because later on in the Mishnah, we're going to learn that the world exists because of three things. These are the three things that God desired that the world would have, and therefore it's these three things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world for. It says B'Shvil Briosav Shatita Lios Ratza Lafarov Aidea Sias Eladvarim. So the people, human beings, can have they can fulfill God's will by doing these three things. So, and it's for these three things that the world stands, that the world was created for these three things. So that's Rabbeinu Yonah's opinion. Let's keep that in mind, and we'll take. Imagine we had a blackboard here, and we take on the blackboard, we put up Rabbeinu Yonah's opinion on the side here. And now let's look at the Rambam. So the Rambam is on in our source sheets. It would be source number 4, and the Rambam says as follows. This is from his explanation, his parish on the Mishnah, and his explanation on this Mishnah. The Rambam says as follows: Yomar shebechachma v'hi Torah b'malos hamidos v'hein gimilos chasadim v'b'kiyum tzivei Torah v'hein harkarbanos hatmadas tikun ha'olam. These three things, Torah, gimilos chasadim, and the avoda, right, the Beis Hamikdash. These three things are how man perfects themselves. We talked about this yesterday. It's going to be a recurring theme, especially in the explanation of the Rambam on Pirkei Avot. These three things are how man refines himself and how man improves himself in this world, right? Through great actions, gemilos chasadim, chesed, caring for other people, through the karbanos, which is the right, and that's that, and the offerings in the Beit HaMikdash, and through learning of the Torah. These three things is what does man. And now I'm going to say a phrase that's going to throw everybody, because everybody's heard this phrase, and in contemporary times, this phrase has sort of become like jelly. It doesn't mean that much. It wiggles around. It doesn't mean so much. It means whatever everybody thinks. But here the Rambam's going to give, and I'm going to give you a real special type of trying to think of how to say this, a real new way of looking at this. So watch this. Okay, so he says that what do these things do? They bring tikkun olam. These three things fix the world. Now I want you to understand. Automatically, your mind is coming to political connotations. Everybody talks about Judaism is all about tikkun olam. That's not what the Rambam is saying. It's not talking about the Hasidic idea of tikkun olam, that there was once a jug somewhere and broke and sparks flew everywhere, and now we're trying to collect the sparks back into some sort of broken jug and put it back in the sky. That's not what the Rambam is referring to either, right? The Rambam says tikkun olam means the world has serious issues in the way it's run. People have their own character flaws, and they project those character flaws, or they reflect and manifest those character flaws onto the world. And that tikkun olam, these three things come to fix that. If the world was run on Torah, by the ways of the Torah, with the wisdom of the Torah, on karbanos, on the service in the Beis Hamikdash, and on gemilos chasadim, and through chesed, so if the world was run on those things, so then the world will become a better place, and the world will become a more organized and orderly place, and that would be a greater thing. So that's, now, what does this mean, tikkun olam? The Rambam says, look at the next source here. The Rambam says, what's the idea? The idea of what we talked about in the last Mishnah of asusia Torah, by making a fence around the Torah, that a lot of times the rabbis come along and they come up with new rules, and these new rules that they come up with, let's say like muktzah, not moving something on Shabbat that you can't use, so you can't even move it now, the rabbis come along with. All different types of rabbinic institutions that come and protect the Torah. These things come in order to to repair the world, meaning to put the world in a more orderly fashion, in a more refined way. And lastly, just to make sure, I'm going to put the proverbial nail in the coffin here so we understand where Tikkun Olam comes and how we really refer to Tikkun Olam. And this you won't find in any modern day speech. So listen to this carefully. You're not going to believe me, but look in the source sheets. It's source number. My source sheets are numbered like yours are. It would be source number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Source number 6. You tell people this. This is a great thing to tell people. They're not going to believe you. Listen to the Rambam says. Kol hari nefashos shelo bria brua, o shelo hasra, afilu beid echad, o sonei shehari b'shkaga, yesh l'melech reshus l'hargo l'takin ha'olam kefi ma she'hashat tzricha. Let's say you have a criminal. They arrest him for murder. The witnesses get up, and the testimony's not that good. All of a sudden, you have a problem. We know the guy did it. In Judaism, the ability to convict a criminal is an incredibly high standard. It's very hard, very, very hard. You have to have two witnesses who aren't related to each other, who both warned the criminal beforehand before he committed his act. And the criminal had to turn to them and say, yes, I know what I'm about to do. And I know what I'm about to do is wrong, and I'm going to do it anyway. And they have to tell him the punishment. He says, oh, no, I'm going to get punished with this, and I don't care, I'm doing it anyway. It's an incredibly high standard to meet before you can convict somebody. So let's say you have somebody. He clearly murdered them. It happens to be he murdered them in front of two brothers. The two brothers both canceled themselves out as witnesses because they were with each other, and you can't have relatives that are witnesses in the same case. So now the two brothers are sitting there telling the judge, but judge, we saw him murder. We saw him murder. We know he murdered. The judge is going to sit there and say, I'm sorry, but you can't. It's too bad. We really apologize, but we can't. Our hands are tied. So what do you do now? Now this guy walks out. He's a murderer. So how could you do it? So says the Rambam, it says and this is the case in the Talmud, says that the king has extrajudicial powers and he's able to kill whoever he wants. He can execute whoever he wants. There's no check and balance on the king's power and his ability to do this incredible power that he's able to have, to be able to do this to now. What do we call this? Listen to this. That's Tikkun Olam. Now, I don't know if anybody you know that uses that term to refer to a king killing somebody extrajudicially to make sure there aren't murderers walking on the street, but that really is the definition of putting an order into the world, right? That's what Tikkun Olam really is. So bringing it back to our Mishna as we close here for tonight, what's the idea? The idea is as follows: that we have the first phrase in the Mishnah is that there's three things that the world stands on. And what does it mean that they stand on it? So the Rambam says it means that Rabbeinu Yonah says that the world was created for these three things. This is why God created the world, so that the world would have these three things in it, while the Rambam takes a completely different approach. And the Rambam says that the idea is that these three things repair the world. They take our bad part of the world and they make it into a better world. That's the Tikkun Olam. And that, I hope, is a good lesson for us to understand what it means that the world stands on these three things and why these three things are so crucial to have in our own lives, to make sure that we all have Torah, which we're doing now, Avoda, which today we'll go into it a little tomorrow. We don't have Avoda now. We'll discuss it tomorrow. They have prayer in the place of Bli Neder, and Gemilas Chesed, and to have Chesed, because it's for these three things that the world, either in Rabbeinu Yonah's opinion, was created for, or the Rambam's opinion, this is what fixes the world and what makes the world into a more organized place. Thank you so much for joining. This is our second Shiur, and I really appreciate that you joined and learned with me, and I hope we get to continue doing this, and we should end with this Corona stuff as fast as possible and still continue to learn. Have a very good